Alpha team, positions confirmed.
Free! Target moving, second floor.
Track 7, immediate departure.
Eyes on target, platform 4.
Down the train. Copy that.
Attention all passengers.
President Trump just pulled the trigger on the biggest government purge in modern history. 50,000 federal bureaucrats are about to lose their jobs, and the deep state is absolutely panicking. This is Schedule F in action, and it's everything we've been waiting for. But here's what the mainstream media is not telling you about what happens next. See, this is not just about firing government workers. This is about completely restructuring how America operates. For decades, unelected bureaucrats have been making policies that affect your daily life. From regulations that crush small businesses to immigration enforcement decisions, now Trump can replace them with people who actually support his America First agenda. Now, the implications are massive. Every federal agency from the EPA to the Department of Education could see complete personnel overhauls. Democrats are calling it authoritarian, but conservatives see it as democracy in action. Finally, having elected officials control the bureaucracy instead of career swamp creatures who think they know better than voters. And speaking of major changes that are coming to America, something is brewing, and you can feel it. The problem? You see, you never know the full story until after the crash, after the collapse, after it's too late. And here's the brutal truth. You can protect yourself after the fact, but you have to be ready now. All this uncertainty, the chaos, the warning signs, they may be telling us something critical about our financial future. So while Trump drains the swamp, smart Americans are protecting their wealth with physical gold and silver. Noble Gold Investments has helped thousands of patriots secure their retirement savings with precious metals IRAs. When governments fail, gold endures. When institutions crumble, precious metals preserve wealth. Don't wait for the next crisis to hit your portfolio. Take action now while you can. Visit nextnewsgold.com to get your free wealth protection kit today and find out how you can get this 3-ounce silver American Virtues Independence silver round by calling that number on the screen. But here's the part that should terrify Democrats. This is just the beginning, you see. Trump's team spent 4 years planning exactly which positions to target and who to replace them with. We're not talking about random firings here. This is surgical precision aimed at removing the exact people who spent years undermining conservative policies. The New York Times buried the story on page 6, hoping you wouldn't notice. They know this changes everything. The administration has finalized a new rule called Schedule Policy Career, formerly Schedule F. On February 5th of 2026, this places around 50,000 civil service employees involved in policy decisions under a new category. Bye-bye. Get ready for the pink slips to fly. Just like the memes. This sets up the policy, but here's how the White House is fielding the tough questions about what comes next. Real Clear Politics asking a question to the White House. Let's listen. No? Where's the audio?
Employees of Schedule F. We've already seen him march through a number of government agencies. I'm curious, should we expect mass firings, or is this a case-by-case approach, a scalpel or a sledgehammer?
Well, look, as you saw on Friday, the president put out a statement about it. The Office of Personnel Management reclassified workers. They're now called Schedule Policy/Career. And all the president is trying to do is ensure that federal workers are being held accountable for corrupt behavior. If they are engaging in corruption as a government worker, they should no longer have their job. I think that's pretty common sense. He also believes that bureaucrats should be acting in accordance to the will of the American public, who duly elected this president. Not just this president, but all future presidents. If you work for the government, you should be adhering to the will of the American public and advancing the administration's goals and interests. And if you are not doing that, then you should go find another job whose interests you align with. So As for specific firings, I would defer you to the specific agencies, but the president in this move and Office of Personnel Management, it will make it easier to get rid of rogue bureaucrats who are engaging in corruption.
And then another quick question about
Sure.
Google, real quick. A federal court ruled last Thursday that Google's dominance of online advertising and ad tech markets violated U.S.
Okay, so if you remember, President Trump has been talking about this for quite some time. The White House is getting press, and here's why. The scope is massive. Epoch Times, President Trump is moving to reclassify about 50,000 government employees from civil servants to political appointees under Schedule F. This would remove civil service protections from these positions, making it easier for these federal workers to be fired. Why are we having audio problems now?
Run like a business. According to the White House, this will affect around 50,000 federal employees, which is about 2% of the government's entire workforce. It also notes that these employees will keep their competitive status.
Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna reset this Bluetooth. Maybe that'll be the reason why. I'll just turn it off, turn it back on. Never a dull moment here at the Next News Network. Hopefully that resolves the issue. That's really strange. It was working perfectly before, wasn't it? Okay, let's see if it works now.
Trump is moving to reclassify around 50,000 government employees from civil servants to political.
You know, I'm just gonna refresh the page. Maybe that'll fix the problem. I've never seen that happen before. Should make for a fun evening. Let's see if it works now.
Trump is moving to reclassify around 50,000 government employees from civil servants to political appointees under Schedule F. This would remove civil service protections from these positions, making it easier for these federal workers to be fired. In a public statement, Trump said this is going to help him root out corruption and have the government run like a business. According to the White House, this will affect around 50,000 federal employees, which is about 2% of the government's entire workforce. It also notes that these employees will keep their competitive status and are not required to personally or politically support the president, but must faithfully implement the law and the administration's policies. This move is directly targeting something that Trump has been alleging is occurring, which is that government employees can simply choose to not enforce his policies. We've seen this with reports of some workers within agencies allegedly trying to get around his ban on DEI, for example, by just using different names to classify programs or just not carrying out the orders. Trump is directly calling this out in his statement on Schedule F. He said if these government workers refuse to advance the policy interests of the president or are engaging in corrupt behavior, they should no longer have a job. Another big move also is that Trump is saying the government should be run more like a business. And one of the main differences with the business is that if somebody refuses to follow a directive, if you don't pull your own weight, you can and probably will be fired. The issue with a lot of government jobs is it's very difficult to fire anybody. And this is where the new classification comes in. Trump's use of Schedule F, or as it's now being called, Schedule Policy/Career, is that it changes the classification of certain government jobs. And this makes it so that the president would have the power to more easily fire them.
Yeah. Let's go. With the facts established, Trump is defending this exactly as he promised. PBS News, President Trump has advanced his plans to make it easier to fire tens of thousands of federal workers. He said he would move forward with the rule previously known as Schedule F, allowing agencies to quickly remove employees from critical positions who engage in misconduct or performance. Now, if you remember, we did a story on the sabotage in the Bureaucracy some months ago, where they were literally handing out guidebooks on how to slow walk the policies. Like, just take your time, slow walk the execution, put up roadblocks, quiet quitting, that kind of stuff, so that the policies wouldn't get enacted. Well, President Trump is calling those people out, and now you got 50,000 bureaucrats on the line. Let's see how PBS frames this.
Promised that he would do this. So what does this do, and how many workers would this affect?
So Schedule F changes the job classification of nonpartisan federal workers, designating them as political appointees. And so bottom line, it makes it easier for the president to fire anyone that he considers disloyal and replace them with complete loyalists to his cause and to his agenda. Now, Schedule F was a part of the Project 2025 blueprint from the Heritage Foundation, and OMB Director Russ Vought was key in drafting this during the first administration, but they were not able to implement it during the first administration. And Russ Vought said throughout the campaign that they wanted to traumatize federal workers. And the White House estimates that this will impact some 50,000 federal workers that could be laid off, but government experts say that that's probably a minimum.
So what happens next? And has there been, I imagine, pushback to this?
There has been pushback. But so first, what happens is a White House official said that agencies have until April 20th to hand them the lists of who they think should be reclassified in their agencies. But Everett Kelly, the president of the American Federation of Government Employees, said that this is another in a series of deliberate moves by this administration to corrupt the federal government and replace qualified public servants with political cronies. AFG says that they are going to sue the administration, and they're the largest union representing federal workers.
So this is part of a much bigger picture of Trump's war with the federal government.
It is. And so this all comes as President Trump and Elon Musk's team have instituted firings across the board. Yesterday, the Trump administration moved to fire some 1,500 employees at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That's most of the agency, William. And today, a federal judge paused those firings, calling it deeply concerning and that the firings violated an earlier injunction. Now, based on our reporting as well as the New York Times analysis, when you zoom out, essentially there are more than 132,000 workers that have either been fired or pressured to take buyouts since Trump has taken office. We spoke to Don Moynihan, a public policy professor at University of Michigan, who said that this essentially defeats the purpose, this Schedule F, of a nonpartisan civil service. He said that...
Okay, enough of you. The White House is framing this as accountability, but let's hear how key Trump allies plan to actually use this power. Here's Kellyanne Conway. This is what Americans voted for: less intrusive, expensive, and expansive government.
So you heard Mark's report there. Tell me, this is more than just getting rid of those people who might work against the president. This is also trimming the government down, I would imagine.
Harris, and this is what America voted for. This is what President Trump and his team are executing on really day 1 and 2. Okay, let's give the facts. Roughly about 4,000 of the 2.2 million federal government workers are political appointees. Think about that. So the rest are what we would say in the private sector should be at-will employees. You can be fired for cause. You can be fired for really any reason, like the rest of us. 94% of employees in the private sector are at will between their employee-employer relationship. This just changes that relationship. James Shirk and Michael Regas, 2 men I worked with in the White House, and 2 men who I've also worked with at America First Policy Institute, have written about this extensively over the last couple of years, saying Schedule F should allow a president, in this case President Trump, to do exactly what he wants to do. Harris, here are some crisp examples. In the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, you have had career lawyers refuse to work on matters that they say they disagree with politically or ideologically. It's not your job to bring your politics to the workplace. We had people at EPA withholding policy information to our political appointees in the first term who had to read about it in the newspaper. So the careers are not always generous, forthcoming, transparent, and truthful to the political appointees with whom they need to collaborate when a new administration comes to town. This will help change that.
I'm all for it. Drain the swamp, one corrupt bureaucrat at a time. Conservative voices are celebrating, but the implementation details are getting more specific. Here's Dinesh D'Souza laying it out. the Schedule F plan.
How do we deal with these arrogant, entrenched, malevolent people who have arrogated to themselves all these powers, operate in a sense autonomously, in some cases have very destructive effects through their policies on citizens, but they never take any kind of accountability, and it seems impossible for the president to get rid of them. And if you can't get rid of them, you're not really their boss, are you? Imagine being the boss of a company where you can't fire the employees. Well, you're not really the boss. And one would have to say that in areas where that is the case, think of a president of a college who can't fire his faculty because they have tenure, well, you have to say that the president doesn't really run that college. He's only in name the chief executive, but in many cases it's the faculty that runs those institutions. Well, the Trumpian solution was Schedule F. And what is Schedule F? It's kind of a new category. I like to think that F actually stands for being fired. It isn't what it really stands for. But nevertheless, think of Schedule F as a mechanism for redesignating career bureaucrats into a new category where they can be fired. And this is huge because this is a way to take these people from a protected category. It's almost like taking faculty members and saying, all right, you have a tenure track and you're a tenure professor, but we are now reclassifying a large majority of the professoriate so that they're no longer on a tenure track. They are now on a contract track. They can be hired and fired in the same way that if you have a contractor, you can bring him on to do a job and then goodbye, he has to go. Or if you don't like his work, you basically terminate the contract. When the Congressional Budget Office did a study of how many of its employees could be moved into the Schedule F category, it turns out majority, 88% of them. And so this is very promising because it means that you can take whole agencies, move large numbers of bureaucrats into the Schedule F category. And I'm not saying that all of them have to be automatically fired, but here is where Doge comes in. Here is where Elon Musk comes in and Vivek Ramaswamy, because their examinations of the federal bureaucracy are utterly useless if you can't fire people, if you can't close down those agencies, if you can't get rid of people and replace them or not replace them at all. Remember when Elon Musk came to Twitter, he essentially got rid of 80% of the people there, and the organization and the platform worked just fine. I'd love to see if the government can work on a similar principle, but to do that, you've got to eradicate droves of bureaucrats. Now, this is going to be a beautiful sight to behold. Bureaucrats running in all directions. It's almost like I see a movie image of this in my mind, and it's actually quite a delightful sight to behold.
I enjoy it. I think we're celebrating. Political cheerleading aside, here's the cold reality of what's actually happening. The Trump administration is moving forward with Schedule F, which will make it easier to fire. The rule is expected to strip civil service protections from approximately 50,000 or 2% of the federal workforce.
Next tier beyond is criminal prosecutions is Schedule F and terminations across the board.
Yeah.
We're here at the Libertarian Party National Convention, and if Trump goes out there and says, "I'm gonna fire them all," the whole crowd just cheers, erupts.
Look, here's the thing. When I was his deputy for DNI, or when I was running DOD for him, people think it's a myth. They're like, you can't fire government employees. I'm like, why not? What? Well, it's a tradition. What?
It's a terrible tradition. It's we keep up our traditions all the time.
Let's get rid of this one. The DOJ telling me it's a tradition not to prosecute presidents during presidential issue, except Donald Trump. Right.
Yeah.
So we fired a ton of people. We eliminated a lot of waste. Nobody said anything. And also, if these people are in violation of internal regulations, which a ton of them have already admitted to during the Biden administration, by going public, by breaking regs, you can fire them. So while you don't need to fire everybody, you could fire a ton of people, and
you could fire everybody though.
You
Feels
could,
like, but
we need some. There's a lot of good guys left in. I'm telling you, there's still a lot of good folks left in there.
They're waiting. I say the best government is no government, but that's my own personal opinion.
But there's
a
myth
I'm biased.
There's a myth that people are like, oh, who's doing the books? The employee books or whatever. We need 4,000 employees to be appointed when Trump goes in. I was like, where'd you get this 4,000 number? Like, well, every president has said we need 4,000. Why do we need 4,000? Why not? Give me 500 good guys.
Yeah.
The other 3,500 are the people causing the problems that you end up putting in government. They end up being people like Fiona Hill or John Bolton or Mike Pompeo or Mark Esper or Gina Haspel or Rod Rosenstein. I mean, the list goes on. Like, you don't need them all.
We're moving from the politics to the practical impact, and the timeline is faster than many expected. 50,000 federal workers in politics. What is going on? Testing 1, 2, 3. That was weird. We have a new microphone. And it's playing games tonight. The new rule published by the Office of Personnel and Budget was now active and affecting real people, but one observer notes how differently this is being received compared to previous attempts. After about 5 years of planning and warnings, the Trump administration finally initiated what was once called Schedule F. And it barely made the news. If this was done in 2020 as planned, it would have been a top story for days as a crisis. Barely made the news. Trump strips jobs protection from thousands of federal workers. Below the fold on the New York Times. And this is the news as it was presented. I think this is NPR. Gunter Eagleman posted this video.
1,000 career federal employees were set to lose job protections after the Trump administration announced an overhaul of the government's civil service system on Thursday. The changes, released by the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, will give President Donald Trump the ability to make decisions on hiring and firing, fulfilling one of his campaign pledges.
There are thousands of people who work for the federal government here in Washington, D.C.
Caroline Leavitt on Thursday called the changes a good thing.
I think if people aren't doing their jobs, if they aren't showing up for work, if they're not working hard on behalf of this president, they're not welcome to work for him at all.
It is the biggest change to the rules governing the civil service in more than a century and targets employees whom the administration sees as undermining the president's priorities. Federal worker unions and their allies sued in January to stop the policy before it was fully developed. Federal judges paused the litigation while the Trump administration finalized changes. One of the groups behind the lawsuit said a court challenge will resume in the coming days. According to the policy, Trump will have the power to select which government positions will lose their job protections. The OPM statement said the Trump administration is also changing how long-standing legal protections, which prohibit U.S. government agencies from retaliating against whistleblowers, will be enforced. In the past, an independent office known as the Office of the Special Counsel was charged with protecting whistleblowers from reprisal. Now, federal agencies will be in charge of setting up job protections for their own employees who accuse them of wrongdoing, such as wasting money or violating the law.
So here's the bottom line. Trump just did what every conservative president should have done for the past 50 years. He's firing the people who think they run America instead of serve America. The deep state spent decades building their power, and Trump is dismantling it with the stroke of a pen. You see, this is what draining the swamp actually looks like. And this is the moment we've been waiting for since 2016. Trump isn't talking about change, he's implementing it at warp speed. 50,000 swamp creatures are about to learn that elections have consequences, and the American people are finally taking back control of their government. The establishment media wants you to think it's dangerous, but patriots know better. See, this is what winning looks like. Do you think Trump should fire even more federal bureaucrats who oppose his agenda? Don't forget to check out the Next News merch shop to show your support for real America First journalism while we continue exposing the truth they don't want you to know.
The system controls information. Information control is power.
They don't want you to see this.
The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now. You know out.